What is up, everybody? Welcome to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner, and I'm a sports writer at KSL.com. It is November 10th, 2024, coming at you with another recap and look ahead of the latest happenings within the sports world. To get things started, talking a little jazz. I'm going to go into this a little more as we go on, but I think we might have a bit of a curse slash reverse curse situation going on with this podcast because, as you might have heard if you listened to last week's episode, the Jazz started out the season 0-6. We're worst record in the NBA. We're looking primed for the tank, as they say, going after that number one pick, capture the flag, etc., etc. Well, of course, as soon as I, talk all about how they're going to lose all these games and they're going to, have the worst record in the NBA, Jazz go out and win two games this past weekend, both on the road. It might be a bit of some power going on with this podcast. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but with the hockey club, they started out great. Talk about them, they lose the game immediately after. Talk about the Jazz, not starting out great and they start winning games. So we'll see if this curse, if this pattern holds. I'm not going to pin it on any one thing in this episode. I will talk about several things that I think are important. And hey, if one of those things ends up reacting and changing tomorrow, I really hope it doesn't. I'm knocking on what I think is real wood. Might be laminate here on my desk, but let's hope. So, like I said, Jazz won a couple games, beat the Bulls and the Spurs. Much to my chagrin, my San Antonio Spurs unfortunately fell victim to these Jazz finding their way. Even with a couple injuries, Taylor Hendricks getting injured, these rookies just keep coming in. Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Cody Williams. The Jazz have done a decent job drafting, and it's showing up with some of these players. And obviously, you got the other guys as well, like Lauri Markkanen. Walker Kessler is looking a lot more like his rookie self, blocking shots down there, getting dunks, catching lobs, what you want a big man to do. So the Jazz seem to be figuring out some things, and we'll see if that continues for them. And switching over to the other professional team, the hockey club, they went out on the road as well, just like the Jazz did. Did not fare quite as well. They went 1-2 on the road, and they moved to what is essentially a 500 record on the season. They're 6-6, but with three overtime losses as well. So kind of a middle of the road record there for the Utah Hockey Club. And now we get to the interesting stuff, the fun stuff, right? As we all know, the Holy War took place yesterday at Tricycle Stadium here in Salt Lake City. BYU versus Utah, undefeated BYU 8-0, and not undefeated Utah at 4-4. And it was, basically everything you want out of a game like that. It starts out hot, some great offense in the first half. Utah goes scoreless in the second half. BYU able to come back and ends up winning it 22-21 on a field goal by Will Farron. I'm going to talk a lot more about this game kind of later on in some other sections we have, but obviously a big win. These wins for BYU have not come very often over the last 10 years or so against Utah. They did win in 2021, a bit of a break, and then they get this win again. So things seem to be going right direction for the Cougars in the Holy War. And lastly, finishing up with some more college football, Utah State. Unfortunately, the Aggies dropped to 2-7 with a loss on the road at Washington State. Now, as we look ahead to the upcoming week, going back to Little Jazz, they finish up their road trip and they are back home at the Delta Center this week for a couple games against the Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. Even if people aren't so excited about the actual Jazz team, their hometown players, maybe you can get out for a couple of visiting stars: Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic coming in with those teams. So it should be some banner games. We'll see if the Jazz can keep their winning ways going against a couple of Western Conference contenders. And Utah Hockey Club also coming home. I feel like they should have staggered this more with these teams that play in the same arena. Nonetheless, back to the hardwood ice rink switcheroo at the Delta Center with Hockey Club coming home as well, facing the Hurricanes and the Vegas Knights this week at the Delta Center. So some home games. If you're in town, want to go check out some basketball or hockey at the Delta Center, this is your chance. A few big matchups there. And moving on to next weekend in college football, Hawaii will be visiting Logan to take on the Aggies as Utah State looks to get their third win of the season. BYU at home in Provo, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, taking on Kansas as Big 12 play continues. They'll look to move to 10-0 on the season, which would be quite the start slash record for the Cougars. And lastly, Utah, the Utes heading on the road just across the mountains, across the border to Colorado, taking on Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and the Buffs as they look to get back to 500, move to 5-5 after what was an underwhelming end to their most recent home game. And that takes us directly into our winners and losers of the weekend. And as you might guess, it involves the Holy War. This might be a little bit lazy on my part, but I think it's kind of hard to ignore with the emotions and what was at stake in that game. So to start off this segment, we'll go with some winners, or a winner, I should say. I tried to narrow things down, maybe bring you something a little interesting. And it's the game winner from Will Farron. He gets the win. Utah native, BYU fan all his life. A bunch of quotes from him after the game about how he would always ask teachers growing up if they liked BYU or the U, because he was a Cougar fan, and very fitting for him. He didn't start at BYU; he started up at Boise State, but transferred over, and he gets his first Holy War win as the kicker for the Cougars with a game-winning field goal after what were some controversial calls, certainly with kind of a late timeout call there with BYU backed up in the end zone, and then a holding call on the defense, which Utah staff, players, and fans didn't seem to like, which then moves into our loser of the week, which I tried to narrow this down as well, not just Utah in general, not just the Utes, not the fans. One specific individual named Mark Harlan, the athletic director at the University of Utah. Why is he our loser this week? Well, he was fined $40,000 for some things that he said after that game. And for more on that, I'm going to read in full his quote, which is brought to you, was in the press conference with the media after that Utah loss, brought to you by the story written by Josh Furlong on KSL.com. Harlan said, "I've been an athletic director for 12 years. This game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight." Well, he didn't really have to talk with the commissioner because the commissioner reached out to him and said, "Hey, we're not going to take that kind of blatant criticism of our referees and of the league, saying tonight you don't want to even be in our league. So we're going to ask for a quick little 40K from you." So Commissioner Brett Yormark made sure to get in contact with Mark Harlan, and may not have been in the way that Utah or Harlan wanted, but the contact was made nonetheless, and a couple of public or press releases were exchanged between the two parties. Seems like things should be ironed out after that after the fine, but it's a hefty one. 40,000 coming out your pocket, not what you want for the University of Utah. So that's our loser for right now. It's also kind of our hot take review. I was gonna do this later, but we'll just do it now. The hot take of this game was stolen from us. We posted it on our KSL.com Instagram account, that quote. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about kind of that idea. Was the game stolen? Was it rigged? Was it actually a holding call? Um, at the end of the day, plays are called, penalties are called, games are won and lost by who scores points and who makes the play, right? And Utah didn't score any points in the second half. That's not really a winning recipe, especially when you're at home. And, for better or for worse, even after that penalty, whether you like it or not, Utah allowed BYU to make a big pass to Chase Roberts, and then to get a field goal. They still had to make the field goal. They still had to make these plays. BYU did it when they had to. Utah in the second half didn't make the plays. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what happens on the field matters, obviously. Yes, the penalties matter, but I think at the end of the day, it's the players and the teams that go out and either win or lose the game. And BYU won that game. Obviously, it's become clear as we've evaluated that play over and over again that there was a hold. Now, whether or not the timing of it was correct or whether it was a strong enough hold for it to be called, we can debate that all day, right? There was a face mask that was called earlier in the game on BYU, and some BYU fans didn't like that. So I think it all kind of evens out at the end of the day. Makeup calls are made. I believe that is certainly a thing. Referees try to even out the game. Did the best that they could. The Big 12 backed them up and said, "Hey, they did their best. If you're going to say they didn't and that there was some other nefarious work going on here, we're not going to stand for that." And they fined. So I think this hot take review basically boils down to what happened in the aftermath, and the aftermath was Mark Harlan was was criticized for what he said. People were not very happy about it. Fined $40,000. BYU still undefeated. So that's your hot take review. Lastly, Utah fans are not going to like this either, but our stock up, stock down for this week. It's not really buying low at this point. Maybe it is, but he is making the national radar and making national lists already. Egor Demin, point guard for the BYU men's basketball team. You're going to want to watch this kid. 6'9" point guard out of Russia, played somewhat professionally in Europe and is now here in Provo in Utah playing for BYU, 18 years old, and projected at this point was originally projected to be a top 10 pick in the 2025 NBA draft. At this point, just after a week of college basketball play, already projected to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft by several national voices. So buy some stock in Egor Demin if you're able to at this point, which I think you'll probably be able to because they haven't really played anybody yet. Couple of kind of lower college teams. The big tests are still to come for BYU basketball, obviously, as they get into some of these preseason tournaments, but also into Big 12 play. It's only going to get more competitive for Demon and these BYU Cougars now coached by Kevin Young, who was an NBA guy, NBA assistant for many, many years, and is now he's brought some NBA talent to BYU, and it's looking like they're going to come through and kind of realize that potential. So if you haven't had a chance to check him out, highlights are already up all over social media. It shouldn't be hard to find him. But as I mentioned last week, college basketball is now underway, getting into full swing over the next couple weeks as we head into kind of the Thanksgiving season, I guess I would say, is when some of those bigger matchups happen. So check out the Cougars, check out Egor Demin. Because, hey, like I mentioned last week, the Jazz might still end up having a pretty decent draft pick. Your team, whoever it might be, might end up having a decent draft pick. So if this kid does end up going top 5 and is here in Utah, could be fun to go check him out. Maybe in person. Go down to the Marriott Center. It's a great venue. Check out some basketball. So that's what we have for you guys this week. A lot of fun stuff going on. BYU's doing well. I don't really know how else to say it. Football is looking good. They've got a top 5 NBA draft pick in basketball. So some things going on there that we got to give a shout out to, and hopefully some other teams, other universities can catch up. Obviously, the Utah State Aggies have a great basketball team, and they have a new coach, and hopefully they'll be competitive. Mountain West, University of Utah as well. They've got a couple promising players as well. So college basketball, check that out. Football is kind of nearing its last month or so. And we'll see where the Jazz and Hockey Club go from here because I seem to have jinxed them in two opposite directions. We'll see where it goes from here. So thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.